Hello everyone, my name's Aaron Christensen. This is Horror 101 with Dr. AC, and welcome back to The Stack. Today we're going to be talking about Rolling Thunder from 1977, directed by John Flynn, and screenplay by Haywood Gould and Paul Schrader. Now I'll just say straight up front that I understand Rolling Thunder is not a conventional horror film. However, it's a shining example of 70s exploitation cinema and has been widely championed by Quentin Tarantino, among many others. I remember seeing Rolling Thunder when I was a kid on TV, so obviously I was seeing a more edited version, but the power of the film still shines through and has only deepened for me over the years and over subsequent viewings. And it's now available in a 4K UHD presentation from Shout Factory, along with a regular Blu-ray. I'd like to give you the basic setup for Rolling Thunder, and then as we get further along, I'd like to go a little bit more into detail, and we will proceed with some in-depth conversation. And we'll dig a little deeper under the surface. The basic premise is that we have Air Force Major Charles Rane returning home to San Antonio after he's been held in Vietnam as a prisoner of war for 7 years. He and his companion Johnny, who's played by Tommy Lee Jones, return to a great homecoming at the airport, but it soon becomes clear that Charlie and Johnny are both going to have some troubles adjusting to civilian life again. For example, Charlie's wife has taken up with another man. He feels estranged from his own son. But things really take a turn when a group of small-town crooks led by James Best, aka Roscoe P. Coltrane from the Dukes of Hazzard, stop by Charlie's house to rob him of $2,500 worth of silver dollars that he's been given as a token of esteem from his hometown. When Charlie refuses to tell them where the money is, they stick his hand into a garbage disposal and then murder his wife and son and leave him for dead. Charlie's hand is replaced with a metal hook, but he claims not to remember anything about the experience. However, it soon becomes apparent that he does remember, and sharpening his hook to a razor point and filling the trunk of his bright red Cadillac with firepower, he heads down to Mexico seeking his quarry. Now, the title Rolling Thunder comes from the military term of extended bombing, which is the term that they used in Vietnam, and it also brings to mind the idea of a violent storm in the distance slowly moving toward you. Now, the script was written by Paul Schrader, who's famous for his screenplays for Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, and The Last Temptation of Christ from Martin Scorsese, as well as his own efforts as a filmmaker with Hardcore, Affliction, and First Reformed, as well as American Gigolo. His script was later adapted by Haywood Gould, who would go on to provide the screenplays for The Boys from Brazil, Fort Apache, The Bronx, and the Tom Cruise bartender vehicle Cocktail. Director John Flynn had just made The Outfit with Robert Duvall, which is a terrific slice of 70s noir, and he would go on to direct such uneven fare as Lockup with Sylvester Stallone and Brain Scan with Edward Furlong. But he is in top form here, and he's surrounded by a stellar team of collaborators, including DP Jordan Cronenweth, who would go on to shoot Altered States and Blade Runner, composer Barry Dvorak, who would provide the scores for Warriors, Xanadu, Exorcist 3, and one of my favorite pervy little films, Tattoo from 1981. The editing is provided by Frank P. Keller, who would win an Oscar for Bullet, and would also cut such films as Jonathan Livingston's Seagull and Mother Jugs and Speed. As I mentioned earlier, Quentin Tarantino is a huge champion of this film, and he writes about it quite eloquently and passionately in his book Cinema Speculation, and devotes an entire chapter to it. And I absolutely agree that this is a fantastic movie. The performances by William Devane, Tommy Lee Jones, and especially Linda Haynes as the hometown groupie of Charles Rane, who ends up becoming his traveling companion and eventually his lover. But what I find fascinating is that most fans of the film seem to view it as a straight-ahead revenge flick, where a hero comes home, bad things happen to him, and he goes out and tracks down the bad guys and wipes them out in a violent blaze of vengeful glory. But I think this film has a lot more going for it than that. This is not just some John Wick archetype. Charles Rane is a terribly damaged human being, and we see that in many scenes. It's a very nuanced performance by William Devane. Everything is very tightly held in. When his wife reveals to him that she's been having an affair with another man, he doesn't react. He simply seems to recede further into himself. But Charles Rane is not a hero, at least not in the conventional sense, and the relationship between him and Linda Haynes' character, Linda, really gives the film its juice. It's one of those things where I think the people who love this film as a straight-ahead revenge flick are kind of missing some of the nuance to it. Charles Rane going out and murdering these people is not going to bring his son back, and it doesn't even seem to bring him any satisfaction. When he and Tommy Lee Jones have their big showdown at the end of the movie, there's a lot of bloodshed, but there's not a lot of satisfaction. In that respect, it feels a little bit like a Western, but if we take into account all that has come before, all the flashback scenes of Charles Rane enduring torture at the hands of his POW captors, it feels like the film is as much a critique of the macho male standard as it is a celebration of it. And what I find fascinating is that the film does seem to posit Charles Rane as a hero at the end, and yet he does so many unheroic things throughout the course of the film. He blatantly uses Linda as a decoy and sends her in ahead to suss out where the crooks are hiding, deliberately putting her in harm's way. She consistently proves herself to be loyal, and the way he disregards her at the end, literally leaving money on the table and deserting her in a motel room, is not a heroic act. Yes, it's keeping her out of further harm, but she absolutely deserves better than that. There's also some interesting commentary where he refers to the men who killed his son with no mention of his wife. The people who shout with glee and cheer at the end remind me a little bit of the people who view Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA as a patriotic anthem, or I'll Be Watching You by the Police as a love song. It's like, yes, it's fantastic, and yes, I get that you love it, but I'm like, do you love it for the right reasons? Do you understand what is actually being said? And I don't mean that to come off as some high-minded moral viewpoint. It just feels like that's the message of the film. It feels like that is in the text. And if we ignore that text and merely look at it as its exploitation elements, a guy with a hook goes out and avenges the death of his son, I think we're missing out on what this film really is. It was one of the first coming home from Vietnam stories to be brought to the screen. It predates things like Coming Home and The Deer Hunter, and it's very clearly, to me at least, a critique of war and its dehumanizing effect on its participants. And I find it interesting that Quentin Tarantino never mentions this. Both of the commentaries on this new Shout Factory release, they don't mention it. And for me, it feels so very obvious that this is not a simple straight-ahead revenge flick. And there's a lot more nuance going on. And I love this movie just as much as they do. I think I just love it for different reasons. Let's look at the new release from Shout Factory. It's a pretty straightforward release. There's just 2 discs, one of the UHD and one a regular Blu-ray. There are 2 commentary tracks. One is with C. Courtney Joyner, moderating with our screenwriter Haywood Gould. And the second commentary track is an interesting one, being that it features 2 indie filmmakers, Jackson Stewart and Francis Galuppi, who are clear fans of the film, but they're not the usual film scholars that you might expect. On the one hand, I applaud Shout Factory for getting some new voices in their stable. On the other hand, no disrespect to Mr. Stewart or Galuppi, but I wonder if we couldn't have gotten a higher caliber of commentator. Surely there are those higher up the food chain who have a love for this film as well. There are 3 main featurettes, each lasting about 20 minutes. One is an interview with our composer, Barry Dvorzan. Courtney C. Joyner does a visual essay of the early films of John Flynn. And the jewel in the crown for me is The Making of Rolling Thunder, which has interviews with Tommy Lee Jones, William Devane, Paul Schrader, and Haywood Gould. And listening to Devane and Jones reflect back on their experiences, that for me was the most fun. I really enjoyed that. I can only guess they tried to get Devane and Jones to maybe contribute the commentary track and that they turned down the gig for whatever reason. There's also a Trailers from Hell episode with Eli Roth, who makes a few factual errors, but it's clear that he loves the film, and so I'm going to cut him a little slack. There are trailers, radio spots, and a stills gallery to wrap things up. So that's Rolling Thunder from Shout Factory, available now on 4K UHD and Blu-ray. Absolutely worth picking up. It's by far the best this film has ever looked, and it's the most complete package in terms of supplements that you're going to find right now. Let us know your thoughts about Rolling Thunder, and if you have thoughts about my thoughts about Rolling Thunder, leave those as well. There'll also be another 5 titles in the description of this video. You let me know what you'd like to see taken off the stack. Until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.